Hello and welcome to the Female Guide podcast. Thank you, new and old listeners, watchers, for coming back. Today we have the amazing Elena, who is going to be sharing with us her journey, her experience with narcissistic behaviour, how she become aware of what narcissistic behaviour is, but more importantly, what she was able to do and learn to break free from that. So thank you so much, Elena, for agreeing to come on.
Thank you.
So do you want to start just by telling us a little bit about you? Who are you? What it is that you do?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I run a marketing agency. I've been doing that for, 29 years. And in terms of being in marketing, I started when I was 12, that old. And 51 now. And I fell into, and I say fell into because you don't realise what you're falling into, a toxic relationship a few years ago. We were, I'll say, together on and off for around 4.5 years, living together for about some 2.5 years. And that was during lockdown as well. So obviously that was slightly heightened in terms of, life was not normal at that point in time. So I'm probably, I'm about just under 2 years free now. And life is so much different now. It's so much better now. And my sort of feeling is really, it's taken me a while to talk about it publicly, because there's this feeling, that you're not, they try to stop you from talking, or try to stop you from sort of really expressing to people around you what's going on. But if we don't talk about it, if we don't feel that we have that voice, then other people aren't going to necessarily see the red flags or see things. And my sort of passion, if you like, is trying to educate people so they don't go through what I went through. And also, how do you then get out of it, and how I sort of moved on. If anything that I can say here will help someone, even one person, then that's kind of one of my goals.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So how did you, lockdown was horrendous, to say the least, in itself anyway. How did you cope during that period, being involved with somebody who was a narcissist? Did you know at this point that these behaviours were actually narcissistic behaviours?
No, I'd not even heard. I actually not heard of the word narcissist until a friend of mine, a completely different situation, had been, had experienced that type of behaviour from someone else, and she mentioned this word narcissist, and I'm like, what's that? I've never heard of it before. This is before lockdown. And I think my mum, bless her, was diagnosed with terminal cancer in 2019, and that, obviously, my world imploded at that point. And I was just, the grief started at the point where she was diagnosed, and I was with this person at that time. And I was just focusing on that, really, and sort of dealing with that and helping my dad, and just getting through day by day, and coming to terms with what was going to happen. There were definitely red flags. There were situations that were coming up, but I just didn't piece the two together, because I think until you've experienced that type of behavior, you don't get it. You sort of look at it, you think, is that really? No, they're not going to do that. That's something, when someone's saying to you, I love you and I'm planning a future with you, you can't fathom that actually there's a whole other agenda that's going on behind it. So it wasn't actually, I think it was until she actually passed in 2020 that I started questioning what was going on within the relationship. And I'd lost half my income overnight through when the first lockdown happened. The ex-partner, we had a working relationship as well as a personal relationship, and because of things that he did, he lost all of his income. That's not his fault, that's just a result of COVID. So I was focusing on grieving for my mum, and I was focusing on building the business back up, because I was the main breadwinner. There was, I've got 2 children, not by him, by a previous marriage. So I've always thrown myself into my work. My work has always been a distraction for me. So, but I think it was around after Mum passed, and whatever you believe, I kind of want to think she had a bit of a handle in this. There's an argument that happened, and I realized every single time we had an argument, it would come back on me. The blame would just be spun. And I remember thinking, hang on, why is this happening? I've never had a relationship where I've said sorry as much, or I've been you know, crying as much, where I've been so insecure, and I'm not an insecure person, not at all. And I did actually say to him, you know, this is narcissistic.
Yeah.
And he obviously denied, you know, and said, no, you know, not at all. And he even said, you know, things like, I even looked up gaslighting, you know, because I was realizing, hang on, you know, I know how a certain situation played out, but then it was said to me differently afterwards. So you're questioning your reality and your thought process.
Mm-hmm.
So I took it upon myself just to start researching. And I just looked online. I joined, you know, different Facebook groups, and I looked at podcasts and YouTube videos, and there is a huge amount of information out there. And I think, you know, the phrase knowledge is power is really true, not power in a negative sense, but the more you know, and the more you understand about the patterns of behavior that I was seeing, then you can start processing it and start realizing, right, this is what's going on.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yes. And it takes time, because I remember reading people's stories thinking, oh God, that's nowhere near as bad. You know, you start feeling kind of, oh, thank God it's not that bad for me. Obviously, I had no idea other things were going on in the background at that time. Yeah. But you're starting to realize you're not alone. And I think that's really important. You know, I'm very, very lucky. I've got an amazing circle of friends who, when it actually happened, when the split happened, they were just phenomenal. And, you know, he didn't try to isolate me from them because he knew it wouldn't work. But it's being able to talk about it, being able to voice concerns with people, massively helped me. And when I started looking at the scientific explanations and results around these things and how narcissistic behaviors actually come to light, you realize that there is nothing you can do. Their brains are not wired in the same way, that something happens in childhood, usually it was a huge trauma, and their emotional intelligence just gets completely suppressed. And then the brains literally do not develop in the same way as people that don't have these tendencies. Now, bearing in mind that we're all narcissistic to a point, you know, we all have an ego. We all need that to a point to kind of do the kind of things that we do, you know, even for us being on camera. We need to have confidence in that ability to do it. It's when it tips over that we lose empathy, when that empathy is gone and it's so far gone that they just so absorbed in that sense of self that, you know, that's where there's nothing you can do. And I think as women, we're predisposition, if that's the right phrase, to be nurturing and to think, if only once he sees this or once he understands that, no. You know, it's never ever going to get any better. It's never going to change. And you know, that for me helped me massively during that time while I was thinking what's going on, and also afterwards when we actually split up, because you need to have, you just need to have that knowledge. It helped me massively, and it is out there. I didn't pay for any of it. It was all out there.
Are there any specific groups or people that you followed or found on social media? Obviously it's free to go on and use social media, so were there any in particular accounts that stood out that you'd like to share that other women who are watching, listening, could perhaps go and follow?
Yeah, I mean, I know obviously you've got your membership, but there's a lady called Caroline Strawson who I happened to meet through my own business many years ago anyway, but she just go and look her up on Google. You'll see.
I looked at her the other day and she's amazing.
Yeah, she is phenomenal. You know, she's written a book about her first marriage was to a narcissistic person, and you know, I think her book is called Divorce Was My Superpower. And she helps thousands. I think the Facebook group I joined, there's, I don't know how many now, it is global. There's about 39,000 women on there. And you know, again, that Facebook group is a safe space. Her team really focus on keeping it safe. Yeah. And it's a place where people can just come and go, what's going on? Am I on my own here? Because, you know, you are questioning yourself. You're questioning whether, you know, what's happening is real, and is real, you know. And I think that this was more after we split, but the word abuse is really hard to process. Because, you know, abuse is something that happens on the TV or on headlines, or you know, it doesn't happen on your street. It doesn't happen to us.
a really taboo subject
Mm.
still, and it really it shouldn't be.
No.
Unfortunately it is, and I think there is that fear of, because of the way a narcissist or a perpetrator will make you feel, there is an element of, is this actually real?
Mm.
Like, this can't be real.
Yeah.
I must be misinterpreting this, or I must be imagining it. And then there's
Yeah.
that fear that I can't tell anybody this because they won't believe me, because they don't behave like this around other people.
Exactly.
With your friend who introduced you to what narcissistic behavior was there anything your perpetrator did in particular that sparked that knowledge in her? Did something happen, or was it a build-up of behavior that she noticed?
I was actually a guy, a close male friend of mine. This person has had experience of narcissism before, so they saw some of the red flags, I think, before I did. I don't get me wrong, I saw red flags, and I think there's about 5 different types of, well, maybe even more, but there's different types of narcissists. There's covert, overt, communal, I don't know, malignant, or whatever they are. And for me, my experience, it was, I use the word insidious. It crept up. It was just picking away very, very slowly, because an overt narcissist is someone who's going to show this behavior very, very openly. And the majority of people will be like, well, hang on, this ain't right. You know, see ya, walk away. But the covert narcissists, it's much harder. And although there were certain red flags, like, you know, trying to kind of move the relationship quite quickly, the love word was used quite quickly, and I was like, well, this is quite soon.
Yeah.
And there were times where situations would happen and I'd question, and I'd get a very plausible response that I couldn't disprove, and that could generally have been real. And, you know, the lying was, there's often a grain of truth within the lies to keep it plausible.
Yeah.
You know, they lie to your face. They'll look you straight in the eye and lie to you.
It's one of, if not the, I'm not going to say the, I'll take that back, one of the cleverest behaviours that somebody can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you look at it from a social, not social experiment, but it's almost morbidly fascinating, the behaviour when you're not in it, you know, because it's how they behave and it's like, whoa, how does that work? Because, you know, the majority of people have got empathy, the majority of people care about how their behaviour impacts other people. But when you have those that don't, it's really hard to sort of to fathom it. And from their point of view, they have to have this mask of perfection. They have to have I'm amazing, I'm this, I'm that, and, you know, their mask can't fall.
Yeah, and they'll go above and beyond to show that amazing side to everybody else. They will make it very, very difficult for anybody to believe you.
Oh, very much so, very much so. I think, you know, I was fortunate that the person that I was talking to has known me we've known each other for 28 years. You know, he knows me inside out, vice versa. He's like my second brother. So that, you know, he knew that I wasn't making it up. But I think, I mean, you know, when we split, and the reason we split was, you know, I had a lot of suspicions that certain things weren't right and weren't true. I then found proof that every single suspicion I had was absolutely spot on. And the extent of the lying and the cheating came out, and I had proof. I had black and white proof. Now, many people say never confront a narcissistic person. I did. I just said, that's it, we're done. You know, I can never ever forgive cheating. It's just something that I can never forgive, and that was before I met him. You know, and he knew that. But, you know, and I've read about what happens next. You know, about the smear campaigns, and oh God, it came. It really came. But again, I think because I'd done that research, I was still reading up, I was still, you know, looking at, right, what happens next, what am I likely to see next? It was almost like, okay, this could happen, that could happen. And, you know, I threw myself into my work because we had a working relationship. There was a contract that had to be finished, and I knew I still had to have communication with him until that was finalized. you know, threats were coming, you know, I'd text messages at 3 o'clock in the morning, all sorts of different things. And once that final work contract was done, I said, right, you're blocked.
Yeah.
And I again, a very dear friend of mine who was an ex-lawyer stepped in and said, you can't contact her anymore. This is just stop, you know, it has to be a third party. And I blocked everything. And I think, you know I'm lucky in that I don't have children with him, and I wasn't married to him. So I didn't have to talk to him anymore once that work situation was completed. And my healing, I would say, started really from more or less from that point, accelerated from that point.
Yeah. So from when you realized what was going on, how long was it then before?
About a year and a half.
Yeah, because again, something that people really struggle with is how to navigate away from that relationship safely.
Yeah.
Like, even if you were to go to somewhere like MK Act or other professional services that deal with domestic abuse, they'll say, like, you can't just walk out. Like, as dangerous that is, they'll tell you to do things like get a second phone, hide a second phone, secretly go to the police to have your address flagged, but you can't just leave. Like, it is more, in a lot of cases, it ends up being more dangerous to just leave than to try and put a safety plan in place.
Absolutely. You know, there was no physical abuse in my situation, although I always go back to a phrase of, you know, I never hit you. Would you want a medal for that? You know, there's always this emotional stuff that's going on behind it. But you're absolutely, spot on. I mean, I've always been a belligerent person. I've always had quite a lot of strength about me. So when I saw that proof, I was like, wait on.
Yeah.
But in saying that, I had people on speed dial. I had people around the corner. I had people saying, you need to step in with that. I'd already set that up before, you know, I confronted. And you're absolutely right. If there is a fear, or you have a risk to your life or your health or your safety, especially if there's children involved, then you have to get a safety plan in place. You need to. And I think you know, I've read many stories of people feeling that they can't turn to friends, or maybe they've not seen people for a long time because they've been manipulated not to. Reach out to them, because most people will want to help you.
Yeah.
They may not believe you, but again, you know, if there's a way of recording some of the conversations safely, if there's a way of, even if it's journaling, but ideally recording, you can do that on phones now.
Yeah.
And I did get this checked out that, you know, it is legal. You can use recordings. It has to be fair. If it ever gets to it, it has to be fair on both parties.
Yeah.
But if you need to do that to show to friends or family, this is what's happening, because the problem is a reactive abuse. When they push you, so they goad you and push you to the point where you flip out, you will defend yourself, and then you're the abuser.
Yeah, of course.
So then you blame yourself. You think, oh my God, this is awful. And that's this horrible cycle.
Yeah. And then they say to you, like, look how you're being, no wonder I'm the way I am. You make me this way. I've never been like this with another woman, is trademark. Praise from a narcissist is I've never done this with anybody else.
I mean, even when there was black and white proof of cheating, it was still my fault. I was like, okay, whatever. So there is a definite safety, and I think the police will listen to you. You know, the laws have changed fairly recently. Now, I'm not going to say that gaslighting and, you know, controlling coercive behavior is easy to prove. I'm not going to say it is easy to prove, but it is illegal now, and the police are there. They will support you. You know, there are various things you can take out, non-molestation thing, various things you can go and get that information and find out what your rights are. And I think, you know, for me going forward, you know, the stories that I used to read, or not even used to, still read, around many parents, and this can happen to men as well as women, I know, but if you're a stay-at-home parent, for example, and you've been financially abused, you know, you've just been given a bit of pocket money here and there, you don't have access to accounts. Whenever they leave you or you leave, you know, being financially independent is a huge security blanket that I would say to anyone, if you're feeling trapped, shore up as much money as you possibly can in a safe account, give it to a friend or something where you can save some money. So you've got maybe 3 months of going, I can live, I can survive for a period of time.
Even if you can just like hide the cash.
Yeah, somewhat.
A lot of the time, women who are suffering financial abuse are not given access to a card. It will be the bare minimal amount of money. But yeah, you're completely right. That's the advice I would give as well, is even if you can't save all of it, just save a bit.
Just say something.
Just save a bit, and before a month, 2 months, 3 months, you'll have enough there for even if you just need a train ticket.
Exactly. I mean, I've read stories of women just literally getting in the car and sleeping in the car for a few nights until they manage to find drive to a friend or something. You know, I think the key thing is you don't have to live this way. This is not what a loving, honourable, trusting, you know, relationship is like. It is not like that at all. You know, I saw something recently which was really, I thought was quite poignant, is that they can be there, but they're not showing up for you. They're showing up for themselves, but they're never going to show up for you. And, you know, there's always life on the other side. Absolutely, there's life on the other side. But it's when you're in the middle of it, you can't see it because it's all consuming. I know when I had a period of, you know, between for about 3 months when I was trying to unravel everything, there were days where it was like, oh my God, literally hour by hour by hour just getting through, trying to work, trying to deal with my kids, and this constant messaging, constant worry. And a very close friend of mine said to me, it was amazing advice. I couldn't deal with it at the time, but she said to me, you have to take the emotion out of this and look at the facts of what he is saying. He hasn't got anything on you.
No.
Take the emotion out. And she was absolutely right. Yeah. But at the time, you're like, you know,
in a bit of a different headspace.
Oh, massively. And your nervous system, you know, depending on how long you've been in this situation, your nervous system is shot to pieces. If you've been walking on eggshells for years, you know, if you've been afraid to say the wrong thing, if just getting out, it's not going to be, oh, I'm free now, that's it. It takes time.
That's when the real work begins.
Yeah.
So were there any red flags earlier on in the relationship that you had missed because you weren't aware of this behavior pattern? If you were to look at the relationship now, knowing what you know, what was it that you missed early on?
There were certain markers around just his behavior with other people. So he was the life and soul of the party. He would be amazing fun to be with, but there was a lot of vanity there, the ego, and almost kind of always staring in the mirror and doing different things. And that is something, well, that's not a red flag. But then I remember something happened, he did something, and it was a case of, I'm not good enough for you. You're better off without me. Dumped. You know, and obviously when someone says that to you, you know, I'm not good enough for you. You're natural. Of course you are. Absolutely, of course you are. And that, you know, and there were always other women chasing him. And chasing him, you know, now I know that's not the case.
Yeah.
But the triangulation, you know, so there would be me, there was someone else, and then him. And I know, because I've seen it, she was being told a pack of lies as well.
Yeah.
As I was. Now, you know, the one huge thing I learned is your gut instinct is always right. If something feels off, it's off.
Yeah.
Don't hang around to find out what it is. Just get out, you know, because they'll never change. So I was always made to feel jealous. I've never been jealous. I've never had to feel jealous in a relationship ever.
Yeah.
So there were things like that. And there were times when we'd be on the phone and suddenly the phone would go dead. And then he'd call back within, say, 20 minutes. I'd be outside. And I'd be like, oh, what happened there? And for some reason. Now I know he wasn't alone.
Yeah.
He was talking to me. So the little things like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, now, almost 2 years on, you know, if you start dating again, and I could write a Lord of the Rings trilogy about online dating apps, trust me. You know, and again, I'd say, do not go on those until you've healed, because they're dangerous places.
More damage than good.
God. But you see the red flags coming at you to the point where the whole bull is coming at you. And you see the behaviors. I was even asked once, quite recently, about how I dealt with conflict in a relationship on the second date. I'm like, what? Huge red flag. It was like I was being crying. Yeah, I'm like, well, what do you think I'm going to say? And I said, yeah, swipe left, delete, and off you go.
Yeah.
And I think someone else said, we're talking about marriage. We haven't even met. And I'm like, goodbye, just go. So yeah, there were a little bit. I think marriage was mentioned with this particular relationship, quite early on as well, more in a jokey sense.
Yeah.
But thank God that never actually materialized. But so those are kind of things in the early days, and then when we moved in together, and that was a whole weird kind of thing how that happened. But I think one of the hardest things that I had to come to terms with was when my mum was obviously dying. You feel a sense of abandonment. You can't help it. Your parent, bless them, through no fault of her own, I was going to be abandoned by my mum. So his go-to was, I'll move out. There was always something like, if I'm not being the person I need to be for you, I'll move out. So that was that, because that was playing on my sense of abandonment. And that obviously caused quite a few rounds. But after a while, when I kind of realized what was going on, I stopped reacting, or my reactions reduced, because I could see what was going on, and I was like, I'm just not going to react to this. And for a while things did calm down a bit.
What advice would you give to somebody who is feeling a bit stuck, or like they're unsure as to whether what they are experiencing is abuse or not?
Do the research, seriously. Just read up, listen, watch, and talk to other people, because everyone is different, don't get me wrong, and there will be people, there are going to be people out there who are a little bit vain, a little bit selfish. They're not narcissistic, they're very nice people.
Yeah.
But there is a certain checklist, if you like. And I remember I read a book recently, and what was it called? Surrounded by Psychopaths. Psychopathy there are similarities. Psychopaths are not serial killers necessarily, which we think they are from TV. And there's a checklist of about 12, 15 things. And if you recognize a large number of those things, then you need to get out.
Yeah.
So I think that it's having that knowledge of what different types of emotional abuse are. Things like if you're getting silent treatment, if that person is disappearing for a number of days without telling you where they're going, if you are feeling that your reality is being questioned, if your version of events is as it was but you're being told something else, if you're feeling that there's another person in the relationship or more, I know cheating is not necessarily, you don't have to be a narcissist to cheat. But if you're being, the triangulation is horrible, because it's making both the other parties very, very insecure, because they're almost kind of playing one off against the other one. If you just don't feel loved, if you feel that it's really hard work, and you're walking on eggshells, and you're scared to challenge that person, if you're scared to say, I don't agree with this, very calmly, and that's turned on you, that's abuse. That is emotional abuse, and it's illegal. And
that's where some people get confused as well. When they hear domestic abuse, they'll say, oh, but it's not hitting me, he hasn't beat me up, so it's not domestic abuse. It absolutely is.
Totally, it is, because the emotional fallout will last a long time. I had flashbacks for about a year of things that, I was, oh God, yeah, he said that, or oh God, yeah, that happened. And it's my brain is probably, I'm not a scientist in any shape or form or anywhere qualified, but I think the brain will suppress certain things to enable you to keep functioning, to keep going on day to day. And as you feel that sense of freedom coming back and that sense of peace, that was one thing. I remember a friend saying to me, you've got peace. I said, yeah. And I remember, last Christmas, the first sort of Christmas after it all kind of settled down, I thought, this is peaceful. you know. And I say the other thing is you've really got to fall in love with yourself.
Absolutely.
Because I do, you hear about women who, and men who would have run into new relationships right away because they feel lonely. They want to recreate that feeling of being in a relationship and thinking, because the thing is, I think one of the things is when you break from a narcissist, you miss what you thought you had. Because there are times it's amazing because that's how they pull you in. There are times that, you know, they, like I said, absolute, you know, life and soul. But you have these highs and lows, and when we have the low, they're the one that gets you out of the low. So your the trauma bond grows because they're the one that gets you out of that low, even though they put you there in the first place. But you have to be comfortable in your own company. That's my feeling. I'm not judging anyone who doesn't do that, but you know, I'm really happy in my own company. I was more or less before, to be fair, but there were little bits of me, and I've had to do some work on myself to go, right, okay, you know, it's very easy to blame yourself for allowing that person to come into my life, for allowing that person to break down my boundaries. And, you know, it's not my fault. They're very, very clever. But it's about doing that inner work and working out, right, where did it come from? And I know where it came from, and I've done that work. And, you know, I think until you can spend a week, 2 weeks, week, whatever it is, by yourself and not feel lonely, please don't go on a date now.
And that honestly is that is like a golden nugget of advice. That is amazing advice. And I talk from my own experience when I went from one abusive relationship to the next, and because I was just relationship hopping, I felt lonely, I felt unloved. And it was only until I spent time by myself, because I was still very, very broken. I was still very, very mentally unwell. And because that was the state that I was in, that's what I was attracting in to me. So I had to spend a considerable amount of time alone and be able to even just look at myself in a mirror again and really love myself. And then I have a partner now, and it's a wonderful relationship. And that's what I attracted. But it wasn't until I did that work on myself, you know, again, just to echo what you said, do the inner work, really focus and zone in on your self-care, and the person that you're longing for, they'll come to you when the time's right.
And I think the ironic thing is narcissistic people put this mask on, but they actually mirror you. They ask loads of questions at the beginning, and they're taking all this information in, but they mirror who you are as a person and who they think you want them to be. So actually, when you fall in love, you fall in love with yourself. You're not falling in love with who they really are, because if you really saw who they are, you'd run a mile.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so the reason you were targeted, and you are targeted, you know, the reason you're targeted is because you're actually an amazing person. You have qualities they don't have, that they want. Could be money, could be strength, could be visibility, could be I don't know, whatever. But you are an amazing person. And actually, the one thing when I came out of it, I thought, I'm not going to change and become this closed off, cold, emotionless person, because I supported him financially and emotionally. If I felt that was the right thing to do again, I would do it again. Because if you shut yourself off, then they've won. I don't like winning.
So going back to when we were just talking about peace, how different is your life now to what it was when you were in the midst of things?
Calm. It's, you know, I must admit, you know, for me now, I have a dog. I mean, I actually got Milo, my American Akita, 2 months before we split up. From a self-care point of view, part of the reason I got him was to get away from the office, because I work, you know, a lot of hours. And I just take him out for a walk, and it's me and him, you know, away from the office, away from just my thoughts, just brain space, if you like, headspace. And, you know, I wake up every morning not worrying about whether he's done something stupid overnight, or there's a text, or, you know, or actually I'm sleeping, because again, part of the abuse is they try to stop you from sleeping.
Mm.
And it's calm. And I now know what I bring to a relationship. I know my worth. And, you know, a friend of mine often says to me, God, you're really harsh when it comes to guys. I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe I am harsh, you know. And I think you'll always have a degree of wariness or be wary. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, just
you know, there's a point where you self-sabotage, yes, but you know, but I think if you're strong, if you've done that in work and you're strong within yourself and you know what you won't tolerate and what you really want, as you quite rightly said, you attract that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to go through a lot of treatment on these dating apps. There are obviously normal people on there. There's some lovely people on there, of course there are. You know, and I'm dating now, but you know, I've been single more or less, apart from a dating someone briefly last year, and I wasn't ready. I needed that time
mm-hmm.
to really and to look at, you know, the behaviors and to look at who's out there and who's doing what and saying what, blah blah blah. And that's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine to be on your own. And I would far rather now be on my own than be with somebody who's not right for me.
Yeah,
you know, absolutely right. You know, and I'm aware that I'm fortunate that I am financially independent. I have my own home. You know, my kids are teenagers. You know, and they were not affected by his behaviour, thank God. He was great with them. But obviously they were upset when it happened. But you know, for me, I had to be that moral compass for my kids and to show, well, I'm not accepting that, and neither do you. You know. Yeah. So life is calm. That's really how I can, and it's exciting. You know, we all, you know, it's I see a lot as well about women who, you know, come out of long relationships and then their 40s or their 50s and I think that's it, I'm done. I'm like, no, you are not.
No.
You are absolutely not done. You know,
and that's
there
such an amazing way to look at it, like that perspective. Like, this is exciting. This is so exciting. Like, you can almost go back to the beginning. You know, you're going to have that at the beginning of the relationship when it's really fun and it's really exciting and you're getting to know each other and, you know, oh, like, where's he going to take me tonight? And oh, I haven't seen him for a few days and I really miss him, because they don't last forever.
not at all. No.
It's really exciting getting back out there again.
But it's with somebody who is going to treat you fairly and somebody who, I think you have to find your equal.
Mm-hmm.
And a narcissistic relationship is far from equal. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's the complete opposite. And, you know, you have the absolute ability to write your next chapter. Yeah. And it does sadden me when I see, and it is more women than men, to be fair, that they think that they're never going to find love again. That they're done. I've seen people say, you know, he's taken my best years. No, he bloody hasn't. No, absolutely not. You know, you got however long we've got ahead of us, make them amazing years. Yeah, you know, you can do that. Absolutely. You know, I mean, you know, I made a friend laugh recently. I don't do aging, you know. And there are some good things about aging, because you know, you do know what you want and realize that, you know, how much you know, but no, there is always life the other side of that bridge, and I think it's that bridge is the healing. And once you walked over that bridge, or you crawled over it, or however you got over it, you will get over it. Absolutely get over it. Mm-hmm. You know, and know that you will do that, because you have to cling on to that. I knew there were times when I sit in my office and I just couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. My head was scrambled, but I knew this is not going to last. You know, you will come out of it the other side. Oh. And, you know, and for me, you know, I've actually taken it to my work. So I know at some point in time, I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but I actually want to create an academy or some form of program to enable people to become financially independent again. Mm-hmm. You know, that's something I'm going to look at in the future, because that, I think, is such a fundamental thing, that if you feel I can support myself, I can support my kids, then I've got a chance to really focus and get my life back together again, you know. Yeah. So you have to, eventually, you can't see it at the time, eventually you will find the good things out of the bad things. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Oh, thank you so much, honestly, for coming and sharing all of that. Honestly, the amount of value and information that you've just given out there is, like I said before, like golden nuggets of information. really, really informative and doable things as well. Like, these are not things that are unachievable. They're very,
No.
very achievable, very attainable, and yeah, it's just so relatable. And just thank you so, so much for coming.
You're very welcome. And if anyone wants to
That.
get hold of me, then my DMs are always open.
I'll leave a link to Elena's social media in the comments, or depending on where you're listening to this, YouTube or Spotify, it'll be in the show notes. So please, honestly, give this wonderful, wonderful lady a follow, a friend request, a DM if you need to. If you're a hot guy, maybe. Not narcissist.
That's the caveat, right?
Oh, but yeah, thank you so, so much for coming on, honestly.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate it so much. And thank you, everybody, for watching, listening. Yeah, and I will be back again with a new episode next week. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.